We're going to be riding the minerals out here. We went way out to the west yesterday to the San Francisco. We'll ride the minerals today. Pretty easy ride today. We'll make a stop at Big Rock to gather up. There's pictographs after that. Then we'll head over. We'll go by the Milford Arch, and we'll wind up at Rock Corral for lunch, where we'll have some speakers. This is Del Hollingshead. It's going to be our drag today. Remember, Larry was with me yesterday. I don't know, you're going to fill in someplace, and so is Chris along the way. So
I want to give a special thank you to the Big Ride 14 committee members. I want to give a special thanks to Chris Moore and all of his supporting staff from the Tusher Mountain OHV Club. So thank you guys. Hang out.
Everybody's ready. Let's go ride.
Thanks. Ride with Respect does trail work mostly, but we've gotten involved in more and more advocacy. Trail work and education is a form of advocacy. It's kind of a prerequisite, really, and we try to keep that going. Man, there's been a lot going on in Utah, all three branches of government, as y'all know, and I'll cover a few things and then have time for questions. I'm also on the OHV Advisory Council of State Parks, and I'm on the board of NOVAC, National OHV Conservation Council, and I'm going to go to my first BLM statewide RAC meeting in Kanab Monday, Tuesday, if you can make it. But I'm not representing any of those groups, including Ride with Respect right now, because I'm going to answer political questions if you like. And basically, I wanted to start with Bears Ears because, of course, it was shrunk, which I think was justified, but we still don't know whether it's going to hold up in court. And even if it does hold up, the next president could come along and make it even bigger than Obama did. It's a tough one. Hopefully what that seesawing would do is compel the other side of the aisle, so to speak, to reform the Antiquities Act. But they might make the calculation that, you know what, we think over time the back and forth will be in our favor. Eventually the monuments will get big and stay big. And so I don't know what the key is to getting the Antiquities Act reform, but that is really the Bears Ears problem, in my opinion, because it's just going way beyond what Congress intended the Antiquities Act to do. Yes?
Well, I was there a month ago. Real interesting, because we went out to Hovenweek National Monument.
Right.
Built, I think it was made a monument in 1920 or something. They used the Antiquities Act, and if you look at it, there's 5 separate national park or national monuments there. They've got this little section here, this little section. It was built as designed.
Yeah.
5 separate, unique little areas. In today's world, they would have just taken 2 million acres and said this is all it, like Bears Ears. So in the same county, you got Bears Ears where they're doing what, 1.9. Yeah. Then you've got Hovenweek, which is the way it was intended. We're protecting this one unique thing, and that's something I think we should be pointing out and saying, look at this. This is the way it is. Yeah. This is the way you're abusing it.
There could be better education among the general public about that issue. Right now, we don't have any better chance than we did in the previous session of Congress. And so I don't know exactly what the trick is, but it would start with better public understanding of what the status of the lands is to begin with. They are protected in most ways already. Also, you know, making a serious effort at reforming it in a compromised fashion. We're not going to get the Antiquities Act, you know, withdrawn altogether. I don't think we need to. I think we just need to get it to match the intent, which, you know, until the 11th hour in Congress 100 years ago, it was going to be limited to a 640 acres section of land, and that was thrown out, and here we are. Also going on in San Juan County is the commission change. You know, basically San Juan County had at-large 3 commissioners representing the whole county, and it was decided that no, you need to have districts, because otherwise the population center in Blanding presumably could be the tyranny of the majority, because these people in the outlying areas, including the reservation in the southern part of the county, you know, wouldn't be represented at all. And so when San Juan County was forced to give up their at-large 3 seats and go districts, they allegedly did districting that prevented Native Americans from getting more than one seat, essentially, because again, the reservation is in the southern part of the county, and I don't know the details, but that's what the judge decided. And there was basically a court-mandated redistricting, which, as far as I can tell, sort of ensures that people outside the reservation won't get more than one seat. Well, the population is basically 50-50 between native and non-native in the county. So I'm not sure how this new district is any more fair than the old district. But that's where we are, and apparently we can't go back to the at-large, which is a lot simpler. And so that has an effect. You know, the current San Juan County just asked for a monument bigger than the one that President Obama proclaimed. And so, yeah, 2-1 vote to the great objection of many people at their county commission meeting, etc. But that's why this is a problem. You know, even if we get another 4 years of Trump and more monument reductions, delegation from Utah needs to make that, I think, their top priority. Even the downsized monument, it covers Arch Canyon, it covers connectors from the Needles Highway and 211 down. So if you're county, you know, that was the whole driver. The whole thing was, well, you're going to get a big monument if you don't concede one thing after another. And most people seem to buy it hook, line, and sinker. Unfortunately, you know, in my opinion, the Emery County staff didn't give the best advice to the commissioners, and the commissioners didn't seek enough advice from different sources and really come to their own opinions, because, you know, as far as I can tell, what we got is not better than a monument. In some ways it is. In the interior of the swell, you know, being designated a recreation area, that's very unlikely to be proclaimed a monument in future. And so that helps the routes in there, although the routes in there are not guaranteed. Even the wilderness boundary routes like the SIDS, you know, Coal Wash, Fix It Pass, those could be closed, although in future, administratively, that's not to take anything away from the bill. A lot of powerful people in Washington wanted to close those routes in this bill, so I got to give them credit there. But then you look outside the recreation area, and you get a lot of land like the Chimney Rock Trail system that could become a greater San Rafael Swell National Monument proposal. You have wilderness areas that not only go beyond the WSAs with what was originally proposed over a year ago through many iterations of that Emery County bill, but this surprise extra couple 100,000 acres, some of which, you know, you're driving along Highway 24 and you see the black brush, and you just couldn't imagine that they would designate these areas wilderness, but they did, kind of in the dark of night. You know, in my opinion, it just wasn't worth it. Of course, we gotta just learn from our mistakes and move forward, and so we are trying to keep a working relationship. And when I say we, it's not just Ride with Respect. Primarily the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the clubs locally, like the Castle Country, which is doing, you know, as good a job as can be done by a group of volunteers. But that kind of leads me to the positives. For us to do a better job, I mean, we had all these clubs statewide making it very clear to Representative Curtis primarily, and then Hatch replaced by Romney. Our position, we were all agreeing to be represented by Mike Swenson, and I know that he did a good job because he showed me the emails between him and the congressional staff, and, you know, it just, we were basically put at the bottom of the totem pole, in my opinion. But to do a better job next time, you know, we need to have the full support of the volunteers. We probably have 1%, maybe 10% at best of the riders actually, you know, engaged. And then we need to professionalize to some extent. You are not going to win a gunfight with a knife. So that means a certain degree of you know, attorneys or experts in Salt Lake and DC, and there is a grant program that to a limited extent can actually work. It's primarily toward trail work and education and search and rescue and other good things. But part of it can be spent on access protection. And we don't want to abuse that. We don't want to, I mean, you can write a proposal for a state grant to, lobby for changing the districting in San Juan County. You're not going to get approved because as long as I'm on the OHV Advisory Council, I'm going to say that's not directly benefiting OHVs. It's too controversial. It's going to jeopardize this great program that Chris Haller's built. And by the way, this new state grant program, the Fiscal Incentive Grant, or FIG, shout out to Brett Stewart and UTV Utah and a bunch of groups. Utah OHV Association helped to get this thing passed. So we're going to have like 7 times the funding that we had before for trail work and these other things. But you should think of what I would say is mainly on the front end, so not suing as much as SUA does, but on the planning end. So this is like pre-NEPA, pre-scoping, having liaisons between whether it's a county liaison or a club liaison, or it could be statewide, that we need to build up our state associations. And these people could work with the BLM, get them the information they need. There's different ways of doing this, but basically if there's bad applications that are too controversial, they're not going to be approved. If there's no applications, then the money's going to wind up getting used some other place. Government has a way of finding unused kitties and reallocating them. So I want to encourage you all to think about that, because you are the enthusiasts. You are the people that I hope apply more so than some slick person who's not got as much of a personal stake.
Well, I hate to change the subject, but back to the Bears ears, I believe there was a bill ran, I think it was House Bill 229, maybe Chris can remember, that Stratton ran. And what it does is, like the Emery County bill, for an example, It went from Emery County, 2 commissioners voted on it, and off to Washington it went. This bill will now make it so that it has to go to legislation, get their approval, and get them on board before it goes to Washington. So that will help, like the Emery County. What's that?
Didn't that fail?
No.
It didn't.
Yeah, it passed, and it added more teeth to that state level buy-in, which is a good thing.
There was already a bill in place. It's been in place for many years, but even the legislatures didn't even know that it existed. But this in here woke it back up, fine-tuned it. So now the commissioners, even though they want to make it, increase the size of Bears ears again, it has to go through legislation, get them on board, and then go to Washington. So It's an obstacle in their way, so they just can't do what Emery County.
Well, and I mean, the point is to get all 3 branches of government to weigh in as they should, because Emery County was the perfect example of how they figured their backyard, which is the Wayne County side, didn't matter so much. Well, meanwhile, people in Hanksville are furious, and the state level would have caught that and said, no, it needs to work for the neighboring county. Not in all cases, not in the middle of Emery County, but when you're talking about 50 miles along the county line, it ought to.
I think another part of that bill also was that we allowed them each county to do what they want, designate 5,000 acres, but anything over 5,000 acres, that's when it has to go to legislation, which will keep it from being 1 million acres.
Right. And the limitation of that is that some people would say this is federal land. They don't need county or state buy-in, period. And so they can just do it regardless. And as long as they get some political cover from the county, whether they get a formal this or that may not matter to them, so that they'll try to wiggle around that. But in my opinion, the decisions are the hardest, but the best made with all 3 levels of government, because, it's tiered. These lands do matter to people in New York, but they matter more to people in Salt Lake, and they matter more to people in Castledale in that case.